This critique focuses on a creator's deep dive analysis of Colleen Ballinger's recent podcast appearance. It really dissects the claims of victimhood, PR manipulation, and that deliberate vagueness around the alleged lies.
Right. And before we dive into any of the feedback, we have to say the strength of this material is immense. This isn't surface level stuff.
Not at all.
The core of it really is this sharp identification of some very sophisticated psychological and PR tactics. Specifically that us versus them dynamic. The piece just nails how it's used to control an audience, create a sort of safe space, and it even draws parallels to cult dynamics.
That framework is just so robust. It's brave, frankly, and it feels like the whole piece is anchored by this refusal to let these manipulative tactics slide.
Exactly.
Especially that constant demand for specificity. Just asking again and again which headlines aren't true. It's holding them to account.
It is. It identifies that the vagueness is the whole strategy, right? You can't refute something that isn't specific. And that high-level work is, it's also where we see the first big opportunity for improvement.
Okay, so let's get into it. Maintaining the high-stakes analytical focus requires rigidly separating the media critique from necessary but unrelated personal updates.
This is a structural thing, and it really impacts the listener. The weakness is that the flow is just so heavily disrupted by these frequent personal tangents.
Right.
We get that the creator is passionate and dedicated, but when you start integrating updates about, say, private business issues or your physical state, it just breaks that rhythm.
It absolutely kills the analytical momentum. I mean, 1 minute the listener is locked in, absorbing this breakdown of psychological manipulation.
And they're really following along.
And then, with no transition, it moves straight from the hook analogy, which we'll get to, into a multi-minute detour about an Amazon ebook pre-order cancellation.
It's emotional whiplash. You're taking the audience from dissecting psychological warfare to, navigating customer service.
Yeah.
And while those issues are totally valid for a creator, dropping them in mid-analysis just deflates everything. The listener loses the thread.
So the suggestion really is to create a kind of structural firewall. You have to treat the core critique as its own standalone, high-impact product. If personal updates are necessary for the audience, things like the Amazon problem, or, explaining why you're yawning, you have to segment them.
Put them at the start as a heads up, or save them for the very end.
Exactly. Use a clear transition. Something like, okay, that wraps the analysis. For anyone interested in some creator updates, stick around for a minute.
A verbal bumper. Because otherwise, you're undermining your own authority. A deep dive on pre-order logistics just derails the argument you're trying to make about PR tactics.
Right. So for a concrete example, that whole several-minute detour on the Amazon pre-order nightmare?
That's a catastrophic speed bump.
It has to move. That, and the initial explanation for pausing and restarting because you feel like you're wanting to yawn and fall asleep.
Move it all. Put it at the beginning or the end.
That separation ensures the powerful insight about the us versus them tactic, which is the whole point of the piece, maintains its power.
You have to respect the listener's focus. When you segment, you protect the internal logic of the critique. It keeps it sharp.
And once that structure is solid, the content inside it needs to be delivered with the confidence it deserves.
Which brings us right to our second point. It's all about pacing and tone.
So now that we've quarantined the structure, let's talk about the delivery. The critique's powerful, high-stakes analysis is often hampered by repetitive emotional interjection and over-apologizing for constructive skepticism.
You have the facts, you have the evidence. The logic is there, but we notice the creator just keeps circling back to the same point with this really high emotional intensity. And while the passion is justified, it starts to become inefficient analytically.
Right. The frequent repetition of what are the lies specifically, or I am sick of having to say it, it becomes cyclical. It doesn't build.
It doesn't escalate the argument. It just sort of restarts it. It feels like you're hitting the same note over and over when what you need is a crescendo.
And what makes it worse is this habit of sort of self-editing the critique in real time.
Yes. We heard it multiple times. The creator will defend or apologize for their own stance. You hear things like, am I being mean today, maybe? Happy Christmas, everybody.
Or, I'm not trying to be mean genuinely, I'm not.
An expert doesn't need to apologize for being rigorous. The suggestion here is just trust your evidence. Trust the framework you've built.
Yeah, the facts you're citing, the inappropriate texts, the downplaying of events, they justify the rigor. When you apologize for that, you're hinting at a weakness that isn't even there.
Think of it like a legal argument. Repetition should escalate, not just repeat. It should link the last point to a new conclusion.
So instead of just asking, what are the lies for the fourth time?
You pivot. You say something like, and because she refuses to specify which lie, the audience is left with this vacuum. A vacuum that is intentionally filled by her narrative of victimhood.
See, that connects the vagueness to the mechanism of the manipulation. That's an escalation. It shows why the lack of specificity is a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. So for concrete examples, consolidate those recurring arguments about the lies into one definitive section. Make the case that the omission itself is the manipulative act. Then move on.
That undermine your authority. Pausing to comment on a cutout to compose myself, or asking for validation about being mean at the end. It's all a distraction.
It pulls the audience out of the analysis. You are the expert here. Own the weight of your critique. It stands on its own.
Your ability to dissect PR strategy is really the superpower of this piece.
It really is. But that superpower gets watered down when the narrative leans on these overly dramatic comparisons.
Which is our third and final point, and maybe the biggest risk taken in the piece. When deploying high-concept psychological analysis, ensure supporting analogies are illustrative rather than overly melodramatic or tenuously connected to the source behavior.
Right. You're using these sophisticated concepts, cult tactics, damage control, and it's sharp, it's intellectual. But then you juxtapose that with an analogy that just confuses the whole point.
You're talking about the hook comparison.
The hook comparison. So the creator is analyzing the subject's motivation for speaking out. This idea that she had to prevent her kids from one day asking, "Mommy, why didn't you say anything?"
Okay, a plausible motivation.
But then it gets compared to the scene from the movie Hook, where Peter Pan has to save his children from pirates who are dangling them in a net.
It's a very jarring shift.
It's incredibly jarring. You're going from a calculated PR machine to the life or death drama of Captain Hook. The analogy, even if it feels emotionally true to the creator, makes the whole serious analysis feel hyperbolic.
To, like, a fantasy story.
So the suggestion is pretty critical. If you use a dramatic analogy, it has to directly serve the argument about manipulation or vagueness. It has to illuminate the point, not overpower it with melodrama.
But there's a much better path here anyway.
A much stronger one.
Instead of fictional comparisons, focus on and expand the real-world PR strategy that the subject actually reveals later on. This is the gold.
Absolutely. The specific advice she got from her team, that the Barbie shirt bad or the big backyard looks like bragging, that's concrete evidence of a manufactured image.
These are fact, and they make the critique infinitely stronger than any movie analogy could.
Think about it. You have proof that her team was micromanaging her down to her t-shirt to avoid looking braggy. That shows how calculated the whole operation is.
And that specific factual evidence is the perfect counterweight to the claim that the same team somehow approved the ukulele song.
You have to leverage those real examples. The anecdotes about what not to wear or where not to film, that's the tangible proof of the image control you're critiquing.
If you spend more time on those contradictions, you land a much harder analytical punch than a metaphor ever could.
Right. It drives home the absurdity of it all. This hyper-vigilant PR team, worried about a Barbie shirt, was somehow okay with that musical response. It points directly to intentional misdirection.
And it allows you to stay objective. You let the subject's own admissions carry the weight instead of reaching for unrelated drama. You just use the specifics to dismantle the narrative.
And that's where the angle feels truly original. The audience is there for that behind-the-scenes insight, not a movie summary. You've got the receipts. Now you just have to use them.
So, to wrap up, this critique showed really excellent analytical depth. The core argument is compelling and, I think, very necessary.
To maximize its impact, the actionable steps are pretty clear. First, structurally separate personal updates from the core analysis. Build that firewall.
Second, streamline and trust the passion of the argument. You do that by cutting the repetitive emotional cycles and the self-conscious apology.
And third, make sure your high-concept analogies are illustrative and relevant. Let those specific real-world PR examples carry the full weight of the argument.
We invite you to refine these specific structural and tonal elements, really expand on that concrete analysis you've already found, and then resubmit the material for more feedback.
We really look forward to seeing how these adjustments sharpen what is already a very compelling critique.